Hi everyone, this is Britt Simon. Just wanted to jump online. I've got a little bit of time now. I thought I'd jump online and take some questions from you. If there's anybody around that wants to ask me some questions, that would be fine. So let's start off like I normally do for the last few months and talk about DV2020 and DV2021. There's no update. I'm sorry I have to keep on saying this, but we're still waiting for the appeal process. The appeal court have not made their decision, and so we're still waiting on that. Okay, there's no other information I have on that. The other thing that happened yesterday, the visa bulletin was published. That affects DV 2023. It doesn't affect DV 2024 in any way. There was some movement in Asia, which was nice to see. Little bit of an increase for Europe and a small amount for Oceania and South America. I'm getting a lot of questions about will the visa bulletin increase over the next couple of months. Essentially, I don't know. I don't want to give predictions. But there are two more visa bulletins remaining after the one that was published yesterday. So the one that was published yesterday affects interviews in July. So there are now two visa bulletins left, one for the interviews for August and one for the interviews for September. The government are way ahead of where they need to be in terms of scheduling, but I think they can still schedule about another 15,000 people, about 7,000 or 8,000 cases before the end of the year. And that's based on the fact that they've scheduled around about 54,000 people so far for interview. And we know based on last year's data that it takes about 70,000 people to be interviewed to hit the cap, right, of 55,000 visas. Why is there a difference? Why is there a 15,000 difference? Well, not everybody will turn up for their interview when they're scheduled. Not everybody will be approved when they're interviewed. Some people will go on to administrative processing or 221G, and they will lose their chance. It'll time out, right? So the combination of those other things means that they actually have to schedule more people for interviews than the visas they've got. And that typically should work out pretty well. It's easier for them to balance if they can get that work done by mainly by the end of August, so that by September there's not too much work to do. And they're pretty much online for that. They can do that with the way that they've been scheduling cases. They could schedule, let's say, 4,000 cases in July, which is about the pace they've been hitting, about 4,000 or 5,000 a month. They've been doing cases. So about almost 10,000 people. They could do that in July. They could do that again in August, and they basically would have done everything they need to do. So that then September could just be a sort of a cleanup month. So we may see some of the regions being limited, capped out, and not go current. Africa is essentially current right now. There's only one case, I believe, that is not current. Case number is 65. What is it? 63502. That's the only case that is above the current limit for Asia for Africa. So Africa is current. Asia's got a lot more case numbers that have not been made current yet, but I'm not sure that we're going to see much more of an increase beyond the 21,000 we saw yesterday. We'll have to wait and see. Same thing for Europe. And for Oceania and South America, pretty much the same thing. North America went current, but it's such a small region, it's not even worried, not even worth talking about, really. There's only like 20 visas issued in the whole of that region anyway. Okay, so that's about the visa bulletin. So it's good to see the visa bulletin moved a little bit in some of those regions. There's still people from the lower case number ranges that are still being interviewed. By the way, Africa, in particular, has reached the highest case numbers because of the bad operations that we see at some of the embassies. So let's say mathematically, Africa should not be current. It should not be reaching the number that it's at. But because some very important embassies are holding people back, the government have decided to just max out the number, increase the number so that everybody is current, more or less. And if there are some embassies in the Africa region that are working, then those embassies can issue visas, right? But the visas being held back are not issued at embassies like Nairobi and Accra, for example, is the reason that Africa is so much higher than the other regions. It's so much closer to its maximum number when the other regions are being held back. The reality is, with 119,000 people selected in DV 2023, there are not enough visas to go around. And the highest case numbers are not supposed to get the chance. The only reason the highest case numbers in Africa are getting the chance is because of the badly behaving embassies that we know about, right? So it's it's bad for some people and it's good for others, and unfortunately that's just how things work. I think it's unfair, but there's nothing we can do to stop the embassies that behave that way. Okay, let me take some questions. Islamabad Embassy, any updates? Afghans are suffering. Yeah, I know they are, and I feel horrible about it, but there's nothing we can do to speed up individual embassies. So this will be the same answer for anyone else that says, can you do something about Accra? Can you do something about Nairobi? Can you do something about Cairo? No is the answer. I don't have updates. I don't know why they've done what they've done. It's just frustrating. What do you think about South Africa region not yet current? Very unusual for this region to not yet be current, don't you think? Not really. It's not as unusual as you think it is. The last 3 or 4 years have been weird because the COVID impacts, etc. The document procedure came in 2019. So 2019, 2020, 21, 22, they're all weird. And so, you can't look at those years as being a method to decide what looks weird now, right? The reality is there is a quota set for each region. And unless a particular region doesn't take its full quota, which is possible in the case of Africa, then those regions should stay within their quotas. And the quota for South America region is about 1,500. So how many people do you need to select to issue 1,500 visas? Not that many, right? And the reality is that there were too many people selected. So somebody is probably going to miss out in the South America region, and it'll be the same story in Oceania. Same in Europe, same in Asia, probably. I think there'll be caps in each of those 4 regions, or at least a couple of them. Now, the only thing that will help those regions is the underperformance of Africa region. There's only about 9,000 visas issued in Africa right now, and Africa has the biggest quota, right? So with their quota of 24,000 and the underperformance caused by these badly performing embassies, at some point the government will say, okay, Africa is not going to we've made everybody current, they've been current for 2 or 3 months, and it seems like we're not going to be able to issue all the visas in Africa. So we'll give some of those African visas to other regions. And there is a formula and a law that lets them do that. It's not just randomly done. It's not just done on a whim. It's actually controlled by a law. There's a formula that is applied for that. And in previous years, we've seen that sometimes be helpful, and it certainly worked that way last year. So that could be something that sort of saves some of the people, but and so that's why I don't predict. I don't know what they'll do and whether they'll use that method or not. Okay. What about Curtis' lawsuit? So Curtis is, I think, so he's published that he's doing mandamus lawsuits, which are essentially individual mandamus lawsuits, as I think it is. I may be wrong on that. He might be doing something else. I don't know. But he's probably just doing mandamus lawsuits. And essentially what he's doing is he's looking for people who have been put into administrative processing, which is 221G, up until, let's say, the next month or two is all he wants to do. And you pay him $4,000 and he argues for you to try and rush your case through. Now, some of those cases, most of those cases would be completed anyway. So it's up to you whether you think it's worth hiring a lawyer in that case. And if you think it's worth paying $4,000 to speed it up because you're worried that they won't process you, then you're entitled to do that. That's up to you if you've got that money and that wherewithal. But the majority of those cases would probably go through anyway, right? So it's not possible for you to be sure what the government is going to do on your particular case, and that's why some people will think that it's a worthwhile gamble. I'm not really going to recommend that to anybody. That's for each person to decide for themselves. It's not a group lawsuit situation anyway, so it's an individual decision, right? So I hope that answers your question. If you've not been selected now, can you be selected later? So in each year, there is a possibility to have a second draw of winners, which happens around about September or October. The only years where that happens, though, is where they underselect in the first draw. Now, given the case numbers that we've got in the first draw that we already know about, where we're seeing Africa up to 122,000, Europe up to 77,000, which seems nuts, Asia 45,000, Oceania 5,000. Given the numbers that we're hearing, I don't believe that's going to be a really low number of selectees, which means I don't believe there's going to be a second draw, right? Now, I don't really know. I don't know 100% that's right, but the case numbers I'm hearing for this year are double what we had last year, right? Now, I think that's because of massive increase in holes, but it could also be that they've over-selected. But it would be really weird to me that we get those enormous numbers and we have a low number of selectees. That just doesn't make sense. And the other thing is that if there were people selected in a second draw, the case numbers for those second draws would start from the highest case numbers from the first draw, right? So if the highest case number, we don't know this precisely, but if the highest case number is Africa, 122,000, then anyone selected for Africa in a second draw would start at 122,000 and go up from there, right? So these would be people right at the back of a very long queue, right? So what's the point, right? So no, it doesn't. I don't know 100%, but my gut tells me it's not going to happen. There's going to be no second draw this year, and even if there were, it would just be cruel, frankly. It would be cruel to do that to people, right? So move on, apply again in October, and hope next year that you get selected. Okay. Africa, Kenya, still at 21K. Is there any hope for high case numbers? Nairobi, Kenya. I don't know. I don't know what Nairobi's going to do. And they've lost so much time now. It doesn't really matter what they do now. They can't fix the problem they've created. They don't have enough time, right? So is there going to be a solution for high case numbers at Nairobi? Honestly, from me to you, no, there isn't going to be a solution. It's going to be a mess. I think you're all adults. You need to hear the reality. I'm not going to blow wind up your ass and pretend everything's going to be lovely because it's not. It's going to be a mess. It's going to be a problem. It's going to be very sad because certain embassies have done a disgusting, disgraceful thing, and they've already ruined the chances of a lot of people. Now, there might be some increase in activity, but as I say, there's just not enough time now. They've left it too late. Okay. What do you think about Nepal's cases now? Many cases are going to hit in the next 2 months. So every time somebody's asking me to predict something, they're really asking me to get a crystal ball and look at the crystal ball, right? I don't know what's going to happen in Nepal in the next 2 months. I don't know. And, if you just think about that, maybe I'll get less questions about predictions, Okay, so here's another one. Well, how about the case number of OC256? Will they process? I don't know. I just, it doesn't seem likely at this point, I have to say. It seems like that my earlier guesses will probably come true, that there will be some caps on the regions, because your number is one thing, but it's really the number of cases in front of you and how many cases they're going to issue. In Oceania, there's only a quota of 850. So if they exceed the quota because another region gives them some visas, maybe they go to 1,000, but it's just not very many, right? And so, no, I don't think there's going to be a happy ending for the very highest case numbers in Oceania in DV2023. I don't. But I don't really know. So you have to just wait and see. There's nothing I can do to be calculating that precisely. It's not possible to precisely calculate it. Okay. Sheriff Plumbing Service. I just checked my result and I was not selected. Do you think I can recheck it? You can recheck it, but it's pointless. You're not selected, is the reality. And you have to try again another year. Okay. Hybrid Salmon and DV lottery in a 23. Did not get to an offer interview letter. What can I do? My case number is current for interview. So, Abdi, all of this is interesting information, but none of it is the point. The point is, which embassy are you at? Nothing else really matters. If you're at one of these embassies that is working badly, you're not going to get an interview probably. If, on the other hand, you're working at an embassy that's working very well, then, you may get an interview. I don't know. But the one most important piece of information that you could have given me, you didn't give me. So I don't know. E-ticketing agent, enforcement officer. I don't know what the hell that question means. I'm just seeing if that's continuing. Don't know what you're asking there. Goga says EU 6000 submitted AOS in March, took fingerprints early April, yet to receive the interview invite. What are my chances with current Europe numbers? Fine. You got no problem with the current Europe numbers. That's not the problem. And you'll get an interview soon, I would have thought. So don't worry, you'll be fine. They're not going to run out of visas that soon. If they run out of visas, it would be in late September, mid to late September, right? Nadia says, hey, Brett, can you please recommend embassies that are performing well in Africa? Assuming I can make the switch, I want to make sure I maximize my chances of getting an interview in the next 2 months. Okay, if you're a DV 2023 case, you're probably already assigned to an embassy, right? In which case it's very difficult to switch. But right now, the most active embassy in Africa has been Algeria. Freetown has done very well. There's a couple of others that have done pretty well. Joburg's done pretty well. So there are some, but the ones that are terrible, like Nairobi and Accra and so on, you certainly don't want to be stuck with them. The difficult thing is, once you're in the AV queue for one of those crappy embassies, it's very difficult to get out of that queue. You can write to KCC and say, I want to be pulled out of the queue, and they're not interested. They're not going to change you. The only way to get changed to another embassy is if you speak to that other embassy, and for some reason they fight for your case with KCC, and they say, we're asking, right? So you can't email KCC and say you've spoken to Algeria Embassy and they're prepared to take your case. Algeria Embassy have to do that for you, and it's very difficult to get them to persuade an embassy to do that for you. So it doesn't work very often. It's very rare. Some people have achieved it for various reasons, but it's not easy to do. Okay, is passport obligatory when filling the DS260 for DV2024, or it's optional? You don't need it immediately. You can use another ID, if you've got a national ID issued by the main government in your country, and you've got some sort of ID card, you can use that ID on your DS260. You will need a passport, though, when you go to interview, right? Because they're going to put your visa into a passport. So you should be trying to obtain it. But you don't, have to delay the submission of your DS-260 because of not having a passport. You can use the other national ID. Okay. Next question. Chadian by nationality. I had my interview January 11th in Tunisia. Visa application is under AP 221G because of a DS-5535. It's been 122 days till now. What can I do? So if that lawyer Curtis was sitting here, he would say, "Pay me $4,000 and I'll fight to fix that problem." He can't guarantee to fix the problem, but he would fight to fix that problem. The reality is, at 122 days, you're pretty much at the high point of the delay that it normally takes for DS-5535s. We've seen cases take up to about 4 or 5 months. So in reality, you're probably about to get some good news on that anyway in the next few weeks. But I can't guarantee that, and neither could a lawyer that you pay $4,000 to, right? So, I would personally say just be patient. There is time. We're only in May. There's no need for you to panic. There's time for you to wait, right? I'd have a different perspective if we're in August or September or something, but you've got time to wait, right? And so what can you do? There's really nothing you can do. You can email the embassy, but it won't really help. Okay, so it's up to you. Okay, what about Nepal? It's just 19,400 till now. Only hopes for high case numbers. Bear in mind with Nepal, there are not many selectees over about, I think it's 20,000, maybe 22,000. There aren't any selectees from Nepal above that number anyway. So the increase to 19,400, that's pretty good. That's the vast majority of the Nepalese cases. So, there's some above there, but it's not that many above that number, right? When is it coming on again, please? What, the lights? What's coming on? If you mean when's the draw happen, or when's the next lottery period, that's in October. DV2020 I talked about right at the beginning of the video. You can go back and watch what I said. Do I need to play it multiple times within 1 year? Yeah, if you want to get disqualified, that's a great idea. It's a great way to get disqualified. Play multiple times and get yourself banned from the lottery for this year and for every year going forward. No, of course you don't play multiple times. I'm being silly, right? You are only supposed to enter one time, and by entering lots of times, you will become a hole. You probably don't know what that means, but other winners will hopefully know what a hole is. And, the holes are case numbers that were assigned to people that are then found out to be fraudulent entries, mistaken entries, and various other things. And so they disqualify that case even before the winners are announced. So if you apply multiple times in 1 year, that's what you'll become, a hole. All right. Mika says, did your interview yesterday and it was successful. My support was tremendous. All of what you said is correct. Thanks for the support. You're very welcome. Congratulations, Mika. Now you've got a slightly nervous time while you wait for the passport with the visa in it, but you'll see the CX system it will stay ready, and then it could go to an actual status called administrative processing. It will say the words administrative processing. If you see that, don't freak out. That's actually part of the visa printing process. Okay, so you could see that in the next couple of days, or you might then just see it's issued. But anyway, good luck to you, Mika. Fausto, hello, how are you? What about the extra material advices? Oh, what about the extra? I'm going to wait for my signed copy. If it's a book, I see. I remember. I think it would be a great idea. We faced several troubles arriving to Houston. Yeah, what Fausto is talking about is that I've started working actually on a book, which is a general sort of immigration guide or guide for immigrants. There's a lot of things that are really complicated when you come to a new country that should be easy, but there's no one really making it easy because it just seems like every immigrant has to work this stuff out for themselves. How do you register your kids in school? How do you open a bank account? When do you get your social security number? How do you rent a an apartment? How will you eventually get a mortgage to buy a home? How do you build your credit history? How do you get a driving license? There's tons of things, right? And Fausto, I'm sure you're going through all of those things right now. And if you've got particular questions, feel free to put a question to me on my blog, and I'll answer them. But I think, unfortunately, without a guide like a book, you just have to figure stuff out on your own, and it's a pain. Like registering for a doctor. How does the health system work in this country? All of that is so complex, and it's a big jolt to the system. But unfortunately, you can figure it out yourself in time, but it just takes a long time. So that's why I think a book would be a good idea. But the reality is I don't have that much time, so I'm slowly working on this idea. So, all right, good luck, Fausto. Okay, Ethiopia Embassy, Addis Ababa, don't have any information now. Same as the other embassies. I don't have any control. I don't have any inside information. I just sort of see what they are doing and get sad sometimes because they're not doing the right thing, right? Right, 2023 AF 19,000. Haven't received your interview schedule. Yeah, still any help. There's no help I can give you, Daniel. I don't know which embassy you're stuck at, right? So I hope it gets sorted out. But if you're at one of the embassies like Nairobi or Accra, unfortunately, you've got a very nervous wait ahead of you. The only good thing is that your case number is pretty low, and that might help you. Paige from Melbourne. G'day, mate. 2024 OC 500. That's a good number. Messed up big time by not putting the entire work history in the DS260. Shall I unlock it? Note it all down. I only wrote management roles. Okay. So you don't really need to unlock for that. It's not messing up big time. It's better to provide the whole history. That's what I recommend people do. But of course, people rush ahead and they want to get the DS260 done quickly and get it in. And they end up missing some stuff, right? Will that affect you down under? Probably not at all. It's a reality, right? It would be more difficult in certain other places around the world where they really want to look into someone's background. But, you're sitting in Melbourne, you're not going to have a problem. You'll go to Sydney and they're going to rubber stamp your interview in 5 minutes flat. So don't worry about it, okay? You'll be fine. High case numbers or Algiers are likely to miss out, as they should in a way, right? High case numbers are supposed to miss out. They are the alternatives. They're the backups. They're the what's the word? They're the reserves, right? If you think about a soccer team, there's always a couple of reserves on the bench, right? They're there in case one of the main players falls over and breaks their leg. Then the reserve is brought on, right? High case numbers are a reserve. There's more than enough people that are selected, and the people that are sitting on the bench hoping that the rest fail are the high case numbers, right? Algiers has done a tremendous job. You can't complain about Algiers because they've issued more visas than any other embassy in Africa. I think probably any other embassy in the world. They're doing a tremendous job, incredible pace. But obviously, the preference goes to the lower case numbers. That's the way it's supposed to work. So you can't complain, just have to watch and hope, right? When are the fees for the DS260 paid? You don't pay any fees for filling in the DS260. You pay $330 per person on the day of the interview at the embassy. That's the way that works. And if you're issued a visa, you pay a further $220 either just before or just after you fly to America. And that's to actually produce the plastic card for you. And that's it. The other fees that are paid are the medical fees, which you pay to the physician. And again, it's at the time of the medical. Okay. Is it possible that a consular officer may not feel safe to trust you because of a change in particulars? Yes. So this is one of the reasons why it's important to make your DS260 accurate the first time, so that they don't then, see all the changes you made later on, right? As you realize what you missed out. So you should always correct your DS260 on the really big things. The really big things are your name, your main background, etc., your birth date, where you were born, all those sort of things. The things that really qualify you for the case, right? You should also document your full history of education, work experience, travel history. You should do all those things. Not doing so can make them look a little bit deeper, particularly in some countries where perhaps they're more concerned about terrorism and that sort of thing. As I mentioned to, I think it was Paige earlier, that's not such a big deal in some countries like in Australia, because there's just, we don't expect a lot of terrorists to come over from Australia, but we, the country, are nervous of terrorism in the Middle East. So if you're in the Middle East, you really must document all of your history as well as you can, so that you're being transparent, so that you're showing everything. It seems honest, and the government can then do all the background checking they want before your interview, so that you're not delayed later, right? But do understand that the consular officer will have access to all the changes you make in the DS260. They can replay the changes that you make. They can see other applications you've made. It's all electronic, and that's very normal for us to be able to see a previous version of a form, for example, right? So if you enter that your wife's details and everything else, and then you say, they're going to disqualify me because I said at the entry I was single, and then I put my wife's details on the DS260, and now I've deleted them, they're going to bloody know. They're going to know that you're lying, and you're going to get disqualified, right? So you can create distrust because of filling in the form incorrectly, and some of those things will actually cause you big problems, right? Max says, my wife and I have an interview this May 30th. Any tips for a successful interview? Just make sure you studied all the instructions, right? Go with the right number of police certificates. Go with all your documents. Organize your documents. There are some documents that are essential, required documents. And then there are some other documents that you might want to carry along with you, right? Let me give you some examples of that. You are required to show your birth certificate, your passport, your marriage certificate, divorce certificates from previous marriages. You're required to show your educational proof, right? And if you don't meet the educational requirements, then you're required to show your work experience proof, right? Now, there's other things which are not like that. They're optional. There's things like your resume or CV that shows your work history, so that you can have that available if they ask about that. There would be financial documents such as your bank statements or the I-134 if you need support from someone who's in the States, financial support, because your income and your savings is not enough to convince the CO that you're not going to be a public charge, right? So there are some documents that are required, and you should have those readily available in one little stack, right? And be prepared to hand them over. They usually collect them prior to the actual interview. The interviews are normally in two stages. You go to a window and hand over certain documents, the required documents. They'll ask you for certain required documents, right? And then there's with the CO, it might come up in conversation. He might say, tell me about where you worked before. Tell me about your history. Then you can pull out your CV or a resume, and you can have that right there for him, or even letters of history about your work and that sort of thing. So, have a think about that. It's different for every case, right? The other major thing that I would say is, if you've got original documents like a birth certificate or those sort of things, and you want to keep that, you must take a copy of that document with you, and you'll hand over the copy, right? You'll show the original, but you'll give them the copy, right? As long as they see the original and you've got a copy, then you're good to go. But you keep your document. If you give them the original birth certificate, they will keep that, right? You won't get it back again ever, whether you're approved or not. Right, so you want to make sure and now if you've read the instructions, you already know that. So that's why I started off saying, read the instructions, right? Mohammed says, are the DV results out? Yes, they came out on the 6th of May, so 6 days ago, and there's lots of winners already. So go and check. I've been advised by someone in USA that if I take a short course, boot camp in business analytics or data science, I may secure a job in the US remotely. How true is this? Pretty unlikely, to be honest with you. Taking a little course for, for that does help to an extent, but no, it's not like, and in securing a job in the US remotely, that's rare, right? When I came here to live in 2014, I'd already worked here for a number of years, and so I was well known in the industry, and I was well known to the particular client that I'd worked for before on a contract basis. And so for me, yeah, I was able to line up a job prior to coming here because I had companies that were prepared to hire me, that wanted to hire me. But for you, why would a company in America go through the complexity of hiring someone abroad who's got a 6-week course under their belt at a boot camp or something, when there are plenty of people here that already do the same thing? Unless you've got exceptional skills, exceptional education, exceptional abilities, it won't really happen. Now, it is true that companies like my own offshore workers all the time, but we'll go to large system integration companies which are, providing, or body shops kind of thing, which are providing a number of people at one location. We're not generally looking to hire one particular person, and individual recruiters don't work that way. They're not, and a recruiter won't be smart enough to figure out whether your skills are really exceptional skills or not. So, what you've been told is kind of true, but mostly isn't, right? It's not as simple as that sounds. Okay. Any helpful opinion? I'm Iranian, DV2023 winner, case number about 220. Embassy Ankara, no turnout yet. No real helpful opinion, same as I said to other people. The embassies hopefully will get round to people, but you can't guarantee it. And your particular case, well, 220, not 22,000. You got a very low case number, so you got a chance, but I can't guarantee it. I can't predict it. Daniel says again, when you're current in your region, is there anything that you're supposed to do, or you just have to wait? You just have to wait. Oh, one thing I did want to answer is some people ask me whether they should wait until they're current to submit the DS260, and the answer on that is no, you're not supposed to do that. You submit your DS260. I'm really talking to DV2024 people. You submit your DS260 much earlier than when you're current, right? Because there's a whole processing time, and you want to get that in early. Another question I was asked actually today is, why not submit your DS260 immediately? The flip side, why would you sometimes decide to delay the filing of your DS260? And there are some people, a few people, that might want to delay. And basically, when you submit the DS260, you declare to the government immigrant intent. So if you've got a very high case number and you think that case number is never going to become current, right? If that's a risk, and you submit your DS260, what it means is you're making it more difficult to apply for visas like a B1, B2, like a J1 or an F1 or whatever in the future, right? So you're making those applications more difficult. You're not making them impossible. It doesn't mean you can't get those other visas. It just means it's more difficult. And so for some people, that is important. And those people generally, might be better off to wait a couple of months until we know more about what the case numbers really mean, how many selectees we've got, and that sort of thing, right? But other than that, you submit pretty early, okay? Do you know how many visas are located to Sierra Leone? Yes, I do. I know that precisely. 0. There are 0 visas allocated to any country. No country has an allocation of visas, right? And that's probably confusing to you, but the visas are allocated to a region, and then it's first come, first served within that region. There are no visas that are reserved for Sierra Leone or Nepal or South Africa or France or whatever. There's no allocation of visas to any country in the world, right? So there you go. Now, how many selectees get selected from each country is a known number, and presumably a country that has 1,000 selectees versus a country that's got 100 selectees, you're more likely to see more visas given to that country with 1,000 selectees, right? But that's just, I hope that's obvious to people, but it's not based on some allocation. It's the difference between those two countries, 1,000 and 100, in that case would be the country with 1,000 selectees got that because they got 10 times as many entries as the country that only has 100 selectees, right? It's purely that. It's like more entries from your country, more winners in your country. But that's it. Okay. My case number is 43.8K. You don't say which region, you don't say which year, and it's really high. How do you think? Do I have a chance? I have no freaking idea because you don't tell me anything. You don't tell me the year, you don't tell me the region. I have no idea. Don't forget, all the regions have their own numbering, right? So there's a 43.8K in Asia. There's a 43.8K in Europe and in Africa. I don't know which one you're in, right? So if you don't give me the information, I can't give you any feedback. No, I've already answered that one. When will the 2NLs for July be sent? That's a new question. So they'll be sent like today and next week and the week after that and until the first week of next month, basically. But they've probably already started. I don't know. I haven't checked today, but they've probably already started sending some July 2NLs. The visa bulletin came slightly early this month. It's supposed to be between the 8th and the 15th. So it's kind of on time or early compared to last month. So that means that KCC won't have had that much of advance warning. So it may take them a couple of days to get themselves organized. If we see the visa bulletin issued later in the month, then KCC have probably been told the numbers earlier in the month, and they're already prepared with a bunch of interviews ready to go. And so then in that case, the 2NL comes out and literally the same day often we start seeing 2NLs, right? But it might take them a little bit longer this time. Okay. What do you say to those what do you have to say to those who have 53K case number? I have to say, I don't know what that means because I don't know your region. Right. So I would say, please, when you tell me your case number, tell me your year and your region as well as the number, because otherwise it doesn't mean anything. Okay. Now, any other good questions here? Jason says he's DV2022 winner from Cameroon. Thanks for your advice. My wife and I successfully traveled to the USA since September of last year. Settled and started working on the 29th of September. So it took you 2 weeks in Texas. So welcome to Texas. And frankly, you're welcome to Texas at the moment. But it took you 2 weeks to find a job or to settle down. That's actually really quick. I have to say, some people come here with the idea that they're going to arrive one day and get a job the next. 2 weeks is actually pretty fast. And this is one of the reasons why you should have some cash savings, some money. So, I know some people struggle with that, but it sounds like you got busy really quickly in looking for a job. So well done to you. And it's people that are able to do those things that tend to be more successful in making things happen for themselves. So good luck to you. But welcome anyway. Right, let's see. Can you summarize the process? We see the first letter being randomly selected, and then is there anything else we have to do till we receive another email about the interview at the embassy? Okay, good question. So the process is this. You get selected May 6th, you find out, within the first few days. You'll submit your DS260 fairly soon after finding out that you're a winner, right? Some people have already submitted their DS260. Now, about 4 years ago, they introduced another step, which was called the document procedure. And we don't know yet whether they're going to ask people to provide documents or not. When the document procedure was running, what happened was you submitted your DS260, then they send you a letter, an email saying, please send your documents to this address. And there's a new special email address for documents, right? And then they would process the documents, and only once they'd processed those documents would you then be scheduled for an interview when you're current, right? Your number also has to be current. However, that document procedure, the whole thing about the document procedure was pretty much removed, and it doesn't apply for DV2023 folks at all. So when you go onto the instructions, where you go into the page that says, if you are selected, that's how you can Google that page. It says that phrase, if you are selected. You can find that page, and at the top, you'll see there's a little message bar that says the document procedure or the documents are not required from DV2023. It doesn't mention DV2024. So I don't know yet whether you're going to have to send in documents or not, right? So that would be DS260 is the first thing, maybe the documents later when they ask you for them, and maybe not, don't know yet. Then the other thing is you'll then receive a 2NL. The 2NL is an email that says, go and check the ESE page, which is the same place where you saw that you've been selected. And you go back into that web page, you go back in with your confirmation number and everything. And instead of the letter that says you have been selected, you'll see a different letter, which is your interview letter, your interview details. You see all the data there. Once you've got your 2NL, that appointment details, which is normally about 6 or 8 weeks or so before the actual interview, then you go and arrange the medical for yourself. You arrange it, the embassy won't arrange it, but you arrange the medical with the physician that the embassy insists you use, which is normally in country, in the same country where the embassy is. You have your medical, and normally you have your medical, let's say a week or two before the interview, roughly. You'll get your medical report. It's either given to you and you take it to the interview, or sometimes they send it straight to the embassy just before you arrive at the embassy for your interview, let's say 2 weeks later, right? Then you have your interview. There'll be a brief period of waiting, normally a couple of days, and you'll get your, a few days, and you'll get your passport back with the visa printed in. That visa is an immigrant visa. It's a one-time use visa, and you have to use it within 6 months. And it's 6 months timed from the date of the medical, funnily enough. And so you have to enter the USA before that visa expires. Some people at the interview either don't provide enough documentation and the CO says, I need you to get me this document or whatever, or the CO might have some reason to do additional background checks on you and even issue you with a form called the DS5535, which is, again, collecting data about the background checks. The better you make your DS260, the less likely you are to have those additional background checks later on, because you've already provided all of your history for where you lived, where you were educated, where you worked, your social media, all of that is contained in there. But some people get the DS5535 anyway, and they process that. So there can be a period of after interview delay while they do additional background checks and that sort of thing, or you provide a document that was missing at the interview, and then they approve that. And then hopefully later they approve your case and give you the visa. So that's it. That's the flow in a nutshell. That's the whole flow. It's as simple or as complicated as you want to make it in a way, but that's all it is. That's the flow. Okay. So we don't know yet about the document procedure. That's the only unknown. But other than that, just focus on the next step, which is getting your DS260 in, and then you wait. And by the way, that interview can't happen until your case number is current, right? So, and current means for DV2024 folks, means that if you are in the Europe region, let's say, and the visa bulletin says 8,000, then it means that cases under 8,000 with a case number under 8,000 are eligible to be interviewed. And that visa bulletin will change throughout the year and slowly increase, hopefully, so that more and more people can be interviewed. But you can't be interviewed, no matter how fast you submit your DS-260, you can't be interviewed unless your case number is current. And no interviews will happen until the 1st of October. So there's no way to speed up and do those interviews faster, right? Okay, so that's the summary of the process. I hope that covers everything for you. Does USCIS really prioritize AOS DV cases? Absolutely, they do. They really do. I did AOS. And my own case was a little bit stressful because, and mine was a DV case, by the way. So in DV2014, that was my year. I became current in June of that year, and so I was eligible for an interview. And bear in mind, I already knew everything about the process. And my particular office was San Francisco. And in those days, you could go and do you could do a walk-in appointment, and you could speak to immigration officers, and you could actually talk to them and find out what was going on with your case. And so I did that. I had submitted, I think, in May or something like that, because my case was current from June. And you're allowed to submit an AOS case a little bit before the current date. It's actually, there's a thing called an early filing policy. As soon as you see your number is current, according to the VB, which is a prediction of your number being current in 2 months' time, right? As soon as you see that number in the VB, you can submit your AOS case. So I did mine early, went there in June, and I'm like, when am I going to be interviewed then? Like, what time am I going to be interviewed? And I mean, I wrote this account in one of the forums. It was a horrendous experience, because the immigration officer thought she knew everything, and actually everything she knew was wrong. And I was smart enough and well informed enough to be able to explain to her that everything she was saying was wrong. She told me initially, for example, that I can't adjust status in the USA from DV lottery. I have to go back to my home country and do that. Absolute bullshit. That was the first thing she said to me. And I said, that is just nonsense. I mean, that's ridiculous. And I'm sorry, I happen to know that's not right. So can I start again? Can you start again? Or can you actually get me someone who knows what they're talking about? And this poor woman who ran into Brit Simon, already pretty educated about the AOS process and about the DV lottery, she was arguing with me, and she was saying things like, I'm a senior immigration officer. I've been an immigration officer for 15 years. And I'm saying, well, interesting. It's a pity you don't know what you're talking about, isn't it? So I was a little bit belligerent, a little bit rude, tried to calm it down. And actually, that first time, I was there for like an hour and a half educating this poor woman. And normally those appointments are like 5 minutes. I was there an hour and a half. And but they didn't actually interview me until the 2nd of September, right? Which was bullshit. But what they did was they had a few cases, and they combined them all, and they gave them to a specific immigration officer all on the same day. And they did them in kind of a batching, which actually was affecting my chances. I was delayed and could have cost me my visa, and I was livid. I was, contacting them saying, this is nonsense. I went back for another couple of appointments. And it was absolutely unfair and wrong, but nevertheless, that's what they did. And luckily, we adjusted status, and it was myself and my wife. And the reason I was able to get the DV lottery, by the way, is my wife won, and she's from Spain. I'm British, she's from Spain, and that's why, But anyway, a lot of waffle there. But back to your question. I've seen cases submitted for adjustment of status as late as early September, because people didn't understand the early filing policy and that sort of thing. And those cases have gone through. So I've seen AOS cases go through in as short a time as 1 month. And I very, very rarely see any AOS cases not make it in time, right? It's just the government just understand that they sunset, and in general, there are ways to sort of push your case and make sure it goes through in time. But so if you check AOS timelines, there's like 9 months, 10 months or whatever, but that doesn't apply to DV. They are fast tracked. Okay. Okay, let's see. If a previous tourist visa was CWAP, what the hell? Oh, cancelled without prejudice due to early renewal, is that included in the question of no? So was that cancelled or revoked? No, it's cancelled without prejudice. The WOP, the CWAP, without prejudice means it will not prejudice your scenario, your case, your situation in any way. Prejudice meaning it won't negatively impact you. So the cancelled without prejudice is designed to mean that it wasn't cancelled in a bad way. So you can answer no on that, no problem at all. It wasn't cancelled in the way that they are talking about. So no problem. Let's see. Samim says, my application EU 16,400 something has been refused, and it's been more than 1 month that my application is under administrative processing. Is there still any chance to get approved? Yes, there's plenty of chance. It can be approved, at any time before September 30th. I don't know the particulars of your case, so I don't know whether it's going to be approved or not. But there's a chance that it can be approved, and there's still plenty of time, and there's still visas, so it can be approved. Okay, I'm just seeing repeated questions, including these sort of questions, which is, here's my case number. Do I have a good chance? I don't know. Well, actually, I do know. AS 17,000. Of course, you have a good chance. Like, grow up. There are people in Asia with, 40-something thousand. Your case number is 17,000. Right? Do you really need to ask me whether your number is a good number or whether you have a chance or not? Do you really? Like, come on. It just seems like, pointless question. But anyway. How long it takes for USCIS to approve the I-131 and I-485 after biometric has been completed? The I-131 is the re-entry permit, isn't it? Maybe I got that wrong. But anyway, the 485 is adjustment to status. It varies. There's no specific timeline, but DV cases tend to be fast, right? So, I'm not going to tell you how many days because it won't apply necessarily in your case, but it's normally pretty fast. Okay, let me scroll down. Do you agree that the numbers this year are ginormous, and do you think there is any chance of those with a high case number? Right. I've done a whole video on this, so you should know the answer on this by now. If you haven't watched my video, you need to go and watch it. If you're listening to other idiots, I can't help you because you're listening to other idiots. But I've made a video that already answers this question. So there are gaps, there are holes between the numbers, right? And it's not the same every year. There's more holes year to year. So the case number for Africa, for example, this year in DV 2023, the highest case number is Africa 63502. That's the highest number issued, selected, right? And we know that there's cases in DV 2024 of about double that, 122,000, 125,000 perhaps. Now, you can have a double the high case number, but if twice as many cases are holes, then it's the same number of selectees, right? It's not the number that's important. The number is just an order for the line to form, but the number of selectees is what's important, right? So the fact that the case numbers is ginormous is not important. It doesn't matter. What's important is something we don't know yet, which is how many selectees there are, okay? So don't get bogged down with the case numbers. I'm quite sure there are YouTube channels and fools running around saying stupid things about this. but nobody knows how many selectees we've got right now. So there's no reason to be panicking about high case numbers, right? And it's almost certain, I would say, I'll bet money on it, that we're going to see an extremely high rate of holes this year. And where do the holes come from? Why are there gaps between the numbers? Well, it's disqualification methods that they use. It's algorithms, computer algorithms that disqualify cases prior to the announcement of the winners, right? So you might have, for example, case number 1 through 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And case number 1 is a real case, but case number 2 and 3 and 4, maybe they're holes. And then there's a case number 5, right? Why 2, 3, and 4 are gone? It's because those cases had bad photos, or the people who submitted those cases have multiple entries, or there was some technical error on the form, that they made. There's various reasons why cases will be banned, right? Will be disqualified. And photos might be one of them. And I think actually so there's a couple of things that happened this year. It's the first year where they went back to no passports. So they had to be aggressive in identifying duplicate entries without the passports, because a lot more people could enter. So they've been more aggressive in disqualifying cases, possibly because of fighting against the passport rule. The passport rule being removed, not insisting on a passport, means a lot of crappy entries happen, right? And the government have found some way of identifying those crappy entries. One of the theories that I've got is that they seem to have blocked entries from agencies. So I know some people who are relatively genuine. Perhaps some guy runs a cyber cafe in whatever country, right? And he sits there, and maybe for $2 a time, maybe he takes people's entries and he enters them for them. And maybe he's a genuine bloke and he's not going to try and rip them off. Most of the time, I say don't use agencies like that. But in some cases, they're okay. Like in Nepal, for example, there's a couple of big agencies that do this, and they're very genuine. They don't rip people off. But there are some other countries where these agents then rip people off. They put the entry in, they keep the details, and if that person did become a winner, they would then find themselves being blackmailed by the agent, right? Oh, you are a winner, pay me $2,000 and I'll give you the details. I mean, that's nasty, right? But they'll do that sort of thing, right? Now, the government might have blocked a lot of entries from those sort of entries based on their IP addresses, and they could identify, agents that have submitted a lot of entries. They could have done that. They could also have blocked a lot of cases where in 2017, there was a rule introduced about not reusing the photo from a previous year's entry. And they never really implemented that rule. They never actually sort of cancelled or disqualified entries based on that, right? Because I knew people that said, yeah, I did actually enter the same photo that I used last year in the DV lottery. And it's written in black and white, that should get you disqualified, but nevertheless, they didn't disqualify those people. Maybe now they're disqualified in those cases. Now, the reality is I'm just guessing about both those things. I don't know for a fact, but what I do think is pretty much obvious at this point is that there's going to be a lot more holes this year than there were in DV 2023. So that's why I'm not worried about the high case numbers. But it doesn't mean that they haven't got more winners. It doesn't mean that they haven't over-selected, because DV 2023 is over-selected. But I don't think they doubled the number of winners, and that's why the case numbers have doubled, right? That is not what I believe. That would be complete nonsense. Okay. Okay. Let me just do about an hour now. So let me just do one or two more questions here, if I can see any good questions. This is a great but kind of dopey question. So I'm a 2024 winner and my case number is 40,000. Do you think I have a chance, considering my embassy, Jordanian, is the most efficient in the Middle East? Well, you're answering your own question, right? Why are you asking me? You obviously have an opinion. You think your embassy are brilliant. Why are you asking me? As for your case number, I don't even know what it means, whether it means that you have got a good chance or not, and I've explained that. So really, you're asking me to predict something, and we're probably a year away from when you could possibly interview. So I don't know what's going to be happening in a year's time. I have no idea of the number of selectees. Therefore, I don't know how high your case number is. And you already think that Jordan is going to be a brilliant embassy for you. So, that's fine. But you're asking me to predict the unpredictable. And I don't have a magic, way of seeing the future. Okay. I'm just scanning through a few questions here to see if there's anything else. What is the highest case? Okay, so the highest case number. So we have some estimates of the highest case numbers based on people reporting their case numbers to me and to other places, right? But every year I hear about case numbers that are bullshit, and in the end, those case numbers don't actually exist. But I'm pretty confident, based on the number of people that have reported the case numbers, that the Africa case number is at least 122,000 at the high end. EU I've heard as high as 77,000, but I haven't heard anything. I haven't heard lots of case numbers up to that point, so that one might be bullshit. But I've heard also EU 65,000 and lots of case numbers around that level. So I'm sure it's at least 65,000. It might be 77,000. Asia, I've heard into 45,000. I've heard several people in the 40s. So I'm pretty sure that that's at least 40,000. Oceania, I know it's at least 45,000. In fact, I'm pretty certain it's at least 4,900. So about 5,000. And South America, I think, is about the same, about 5,000, 6,000. But I think South America is going to turn out to be higher than I've heard of at the moment, because for whatever reason, people from South America don't talk to me very much, which makes me sad because I speak Spanish. I've got family in Argentina through marriage, and I love South America. So, but South Americans don't speak to me for some reason. But anyway, so there you go. That's the highest numbers that we know about. We'll only know 100% certain those numbers when we get the SEAC data in January of next year, January the 1st of next year. We're able to extract all the numbers, and we get the data at that point, right? So that's when we'll really know. Okay. Right. You asked me about the biggest case number in EU. I just answered that in a roundabout way. I'm trying to find this. Oh, okay, last one. You're from Africa with the case number of AF 32,000 in DV2023. DS260 submitted in September. Relocated to Abidjan, Abidjan, and moved my case there in March based on your advice, but yet to get my 2NL. Any chance? Yeah, thank God you moved. You got a chance. I can't say 100%, obviously. Your submission in September was quite late. It's a shame you waited till then. That's probably delaying you, right? But yeah, you've got a chance, and you certainly got more chance because you moved from Accra. You'd have absolutely no chance if you had stayed in Accra. 100% no chance. So fingers crossed for you. You may have done what you had to do to get your case through. Okay, everybody. I'll call that a day. I'm hoping that was interesting and helpful for you. Don't forget, you can ask me questions. So you might have asked me a question and maybe I didn't get to your question. You can ask me the questions on BritSimonSays.com, right? And I'm answering all those questions. I'm answering about 100 questions a day, every day at the moment. There's a lot of questions. And most of them I answer through my own blog there at BritSimonSays.com. Okay, so make sure you subscribe to my channel. And I do these sort of live Q&As. I'm going to try and do them every week at least, but probably a couple of times a week. And then I'm going to create I normally do create other informational videos, which are not live, but just informational, where I've got one particular topic to focus on. So you'll watch out for those as well. But please do hang with me. It's going to be a long journey for some of you. And so, hang with me and I'll guide you as best as I can through the process. All right. Okay, everybody. Thanks then. Bye-bye. Keep well.